Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind. Well, I guess the UFC is back in full swing, huh? And of course, you know exactly what that means. Whenever Dana White brings the show, things are bound to get a little bit spicy, especially with the current circumstances of the latest UFC event. Can't remember the exact number, I think it's UFC 297, happening at the Scotiabank Arena, where the Raptors play in Toronto. This particular event was a recipe for chaos, having Sean Strickland as the main event, the main guy on the card. We all know Sean Strickland's interesting history with taking on leftist woke narratives. Let's just leave it at that and leave it as vague as possible. As you guys are probably keenly aware, Sean Strickland isn't exactly a YouTube-friendly character. YouTube overlords probably won't enjoy it very much if we say anything further, but anyways, we got Sean Strickland in the freezing woke clown world hellscape known as Canada. And of course, those two things coming together, well, it's bound to get spicy, and that's exactly what happened. And now Dana White has officially responded to all the controversy, and let's just say it's not exactly what leftoids were hoping for. Slowly, every day by day, woke cancel culture and puritanical leftist censorship efforts are becoming, let's say, less and less effective. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. Let's have a conversation, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so we probably should start off with a little bit of context here, although as I kind of alluded to in the intro, it's hard to play the clip itself on this platform. It'll cause the video to go yellow and then it probably won't get promoted anywhere. But Sean Strickland was asked a question, or he was confronted by a journalist, a woke Canadian journalist, and let's just say it didn't go so well for the journalist in question. Well, after this big, horrifying controversy of a man having an opinion that the media found offensive, the media thought it appropriate to challenge the head of the UFC, Dana White, attempting to lecture him on how to run his own business and how to, quote, control his fighters. Once again, didn't exactly go so well for the journalist in question.
Do you ever consider going to those guys and saying, hey, this might be the one time you need to tone it down?
This might be the one time you need to what?
Tone it down, the trash talk?
I don't tell anybody to do anything. I don't try to control any other human beings in any way, shape, or form. They do it this way. I say it all the time, we're in the fight business, and, you know, if you get your feelings hurt that bad, you probably shouldn't ask the type of questions when you know the answer you're going to get from Strickland. Let's start there. You know what I mean? If you ask him, you know who he is, and if you ask him a certain question, he was baited in that question.
I'm not, sorry, my mistake. Not referring to that question, just, you know, Strickland got a little...
I know what you're saying.
Okay.
I know what you asked me. It is what it is. It's the fight business, man.
Dana, I just want to go back. You were talking about, like, you obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, you know, what they can say when they are up there with a UFC microphone, and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there...
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying you...
A leash?
Like...
Free speech. Control what people say. Going to tell people what to believe. Going to tell people... I don't fucking tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on, though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want, and they can believe whatever they want.
Now, these people are journalists. What they do for a living is write. They write all kinds of bogus articles. They should be experts in word selection, considering they always have to use the right words to avoid culpability for their actions. They need to be real creative in their writing so they could spin the truth to fit their narratives. You'd expect them to be wordsmiths, but this guy apparently, or isn't very good at word selection, or maybe it's one of those Freudian slip moments, he made a leash metaphor in reference to these athletes fighting under the UFC banner, essentially asking Dana, why don't you keep these people on a shorter leash so you can control what they are and aren't allowed to say? What an utterly ridiculous thing to say, but what an eye-opening thing to say. That is exactly who and what these journalists are. That was the Freudian slip of the century, essentially tuning us into what they actually believe in. You know, these corporate cubicle hacks simply can't understand a world outside of the corporate sort of power structure that they operate in. Oh, well, I want to write something in my article. Let me pass it by my editor, and then they'll pass it it by the CEO, and then they'll probably pass it by all of our big mega rich donors. George Soros will probably proofread my article and then give me notes and tell me what I can and can't say and what I should change due to who I've offended. An absolute ridiculous dystopian worldview. And of course, as we know with these journalists, it's nothing but double standards. Say one thing that offends a protected group, it's the worst thing to ever happen. The reaction is, well, Mr. CEO man, make sure that you keep your people on a leash. They're offending protected groups, but I'm sure if Sean Strickland was going on a rant, voicing his views about Trump supporters and the Christo-fascist threat, or Christianity and white people in general, well then there wouldn't be any problem there, huh? As long as you promote the woke hegemony, then all is good. Question the woke hegemony, sort of dogmatic cultist beliefs and narratives, well then as this journalist said it, the puppet masters should probably yank your leash. There's a problem with this kind of logic. You know, it's pretty fundamental. Who gets to decide what people are allowed to say? It's almost like a god complex that these leftoids have, where they get to dictate what's appropriate or not. They get to dictate what phonetic sounds are allowed to come out of your mouth. I don't know who these people think they are, but simply apply the slippery slope concept, and automatically you start to see the problem now, don't you? Who gets to decide what opinions are allowed and what aren't? And if we start to put that power into hands of certain individuals or corporations or governments, where does it stop? When you give somebody that kind of power, how's it going to be used, or probably more importantly, misused? It's crazy how the importance of free speech has seemingly been lost. Like, people don't seem to get it anymore. And what's really wild and fascinating is we're talking about grown adults who seem to have an emotional inability to handle hearing things that they disagree with or that they might find offensive. It's wild. You don't get to throw a temper tantrum because you didn't like something that somebody else said, and you certainly don't get to take away people's fundamental speech freedoms because you're an emotionally unstable adult. That's not the way the world should work. You know, people say things every single day that I find offensive. I find communist rhetoric extremely offensive. I'd argue communist ideals have led to death, suffering, and starvation across the globe. Death toll estimates range from anywhere from 60 to 100 million people throughout human history. I'd say being offended by communist rhetoric and communist revolutionaries and some of the things that they say is pretty justified. But hey, you don't see me going around challenging people of power, requesting that they keep these people's speech controlled, keep them on, quote, leashes, because who the hell am I to say anything? People have the right to free speech. They have the right to believe what they believe in, the right to hold stupid ideas and even offensive ideas, as long as they aren't hurting anyone. As long as they aren't inciting violence, you simply don't have the right to stop people from engaging in freedom of speech and thought. That's pretty fundamental to Western civilization. I'd argue it's probably the most important element to maintaining a democracy. And so I guess let's end the video by saying good on Dana White for being one of the first major business public leaders to unequivocally stand by the First Amendment. We hear it all the time, well, the First Amendment doesn't apply to private corporations, blah, 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 blah. Well, it could, and maybe it should. And if you're so offended by words and opinions that are counter to your beliefs, well, then you have the simple freedom to not read or not watch, to turn off the TV, move on with your life, and be a normal adult with basic emotional stability. Some people believe things you disagree with, and some people believe things that could be considered offensive. It just is what it is. If you have an issue with it, maybe debate it in the marketplace of ideas, instead of pushing us towards this vision of leftist authoritarian speech control. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.